Hello again. In this video, we'll try and continue our game of Breakout. At the current time, let's load the game. So we'll open Breakout version 2, which was the subject of the previous video. And let's just run it and reflect on what we have here. So the ball just bounces around the screen, as you can see. And every time it hits one of the blocks is destroyed and the ball bounces off. So obviously the next thing we're going to need is a paddle so that we can control the movement of the ball. Let's add that now. Okay, so let's create a new object. I'll right-click on the Objects folder. We'll add an object. We'll name the object Paddle. And we'll associate with this object a sprite. So we'll create a new sprite for this object. We'll load this sprite, and instead of taking it from the maze folder, which happens to be where I'm configured at this time, we'll go to the breakout folder, and let's choose a blue bat. Let's call it bat1.gif. The sprite right now is called sprite3. That's not really a very good name. I'll rename it spr_paddle so that the sprite has a name that's associated clearly with the name of the object. And right now we'll note that that sprite is probably going to be a bit small for our game. It has a width of 48 pixels and a height of 16 pixels. We're definitely going to want it transparent because when we move the sprite, we won't want the black background behind the sprite to be visible. We'll only want the blue sprite, the blue bar itself, to be visible on the screen. Okay, so we have our sprite object associated with the sprite paddle. Let's open up our room and let's make some changes to the room. First of all, let's remove all the blocks at the bottom of the room. So I'm right-clicking here to remove those blocks. And we'll add with the left mouse the paddle. Let's start the paddle right there in the middle of the screen, just like that. Okay, so obviously we would like the paddle to be able to move left or right so that we can chase the ball. Let's see if we can make that happen. Let's open the paddle object. Let's add an event. And let's go to the keyboard event. The event we're interested in is every game step when the left arrow is depressed. We're going to want to move the paddle to the left. So it's not only when the key is pressed, but if you hold the key down, there are 30 game steps every second in Game Maker, and we're gonna, all the time that key is held down, we're gonna want to move the paddle to the left. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to take the jump action, jump to a given position, and we're going to note that the x coordinate here measures the distance of the object from the left-hand side of the screen or the room, and the y coordinate measures the distance of the object from the top of the room, both measured in pixels. If we want to move the object to the left, we need to decrease the number of pixels. So I'm going to set that value to -5 because we want to decrease the value of the x coordinate to move the object left. And we want to make it relative because I don't want to go to a position that's 5 pixels to the left of the visible part of the screen, because in that case, of course, we wouldn't see the paddle. We want to move it 5 pixels less than the current position of the object. Similarly, if we press the right arrow, we're also going to want to jump, but in this case we're going to want to increase the value of x by 5, also relative. So now what should happen if we run our game is if I press the key to the right, the paddle goes to the right, and if I press it to the left, the paddle goes to the left. Well, so far so good, except of course we'd like the paddle to stop when it collides with the wall. So let's see if we can program that. We'll take the paddle object, we'll add an event, we'll take the collision event, and when it collides with the wall, we want to stop the motion. And one way to do that, we have to put some event in here, but one way to do that is to jump to a given position, and we'll just jump to the same position that the paddle is currently at. So we'll jump to x0, y0 relative to the current position. If we add that then to the collision to the wall, we should find that the paddle stops when it collides with the wall. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. So we'll just test that out. Seems to work fine. Okay, so the next step is to have the ball bounce off the paddle. Not too difficult, hopefully. We'll take the ball, we'll add an event, and the event we'll have is a collision event with the paddle. And if the ball collides with the paddle, we'll want the ball to bounce off the paddle. So let's bounce against objects, but this could get us into a little bit of trouble. So let's do this a slightly different way. Let's reverse the vertical direction. So this icon here says reverse vertical direction. And if we do that, if the ball was moving down, it should start moving up. And let's see what happens if we run this game. Okay, so there's the collision. And so that's not looking too bad. I didn't make the paddle solid, and so the ball actually sort of moves into the paddle before it bounces, but that's not too bad a problem at this point. So we'll leave the game like that. Now, in order to make the game harder and harder, we'd definitely like to make it so that when we reverse vertical direction, we want to increase the speed. So one way to do that is to change the value of a variable. I'm going to say set the value of a variable. And built into GameMaker, there are lots and lots of controls, if you will, or variables that control various aspects. The one we're interested in at this point is speed. And I'm going to increase the speed by, let's increase it by 2, say, and we'll make it relative. So initially the ball should start moving at a speed of 5 because that's where we initialized it on the create event, set direction and speed of motion. But after the first collision with the paddle, it should change to 7. And after the second collision with the paddle, it should change to 9 and so forth. Okay, well, immediately we notice that there's a bit of a problem with the design of our game, and that is the ball might not start in a position that enables us to catch it with the paddle. So I think that one thing we might want to do is on the create event, where we set the direction and speed of motion, instead of setting it anywhere randomly in a 360-degree direction, in fact, let's make the ball go directly downwards. So let's change this. And instead of setting it to 360, I'll set it to 270. Now the way GameMaker works, heading out to the right is 0 degrees, 90 degrees is vertically upwards, 180 degrees is heading directly left on the screen, and 270 degrees is heading straight downwards. So at this point, when the game starts, the ball should be going vertically downwards at a speed of 5. And so let's try that out and see what happens. Okay, the ball goes down, it goes up faster, 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 faster. Okay, well, of course, the game's not very interesting at this point. The ball's getting faster and faster. And finally, it vanishes off the screen and, in fact, passes right through the paddle. And the reason for that is because when the ball attains a certain speed, in one game step, it moves from one side of the paddle to the other side of the paddle, and in effect never actually collides with the paddle. So I think we need to fix that problem. And one way to fix that is after the ball, if I take the ball object here, when it collides with the paddle, when we increase the vertical speed to by 2, we need to find out what the vertical speed is. So I'm on the control tab, I'm going to take this action here if a variable has a value. And if the variable, which is called speed, has a value equal to, actually I want to say larger than 15, say. If it gets larger than 15, we want to do something. And I'm going to use these bracketing actions, start of a block, end of a block, and whatever I put between the start of block and end of block will bracket the action that occurs if the speed is larger than 15. And if the speed is larger than 15, I'll set the value of a variable right here. I'll put it right here, and the variable will be speed, and I'll set it equal to an absolute value of 15. In this case, I won't check relative, because I just want to say if the speed ever gets larger than 15, we'll set it equal to 15. And so now when I run the game, the ball should get faster and faster, and as it does, but should never get faster than 15. And we see that that's working okay. Now this game isn't really terribly interesting because we'd really like the ball to bounce off in such a somewhat random manner to make the game more challenging to play. Let's see if we can accomplish that. Let's return then to the collision of the ball with the paddle, which we have here. We've got the ball, the direction reversed. We've set the speed, but now let's take the direction and let's change it by a certain amount. So once again, let's set the value of a variable. The variable we're interested in this case is direction. And if I want to, what I'd like to do is either increase it or decrease it by a certain random amount. Let's put in a formula here. Let's put in the formula minus 20 plus random 40. Let's make that relative. Now that formula might strike you as being out of nowhere, but let's explain it. Every object in GameMaker, as we've seen, has a speed, which has the variable called speed, and it points in a certain direction called direction. And again, that direction is from 0 to 360 degrees. The function random 40 generates a number at random in the range 0 to 40. So at the lower end of the range, the expression minus 20 plus 0 yields minus 20. And at the higher end of the range, the expression minus 20 plus 40 yields a value of plus 20. So because we've made the direction relative down here, we've checked the relative box. The effect of this is to when the ball collides with the paddle, we're going to increase or decrease we're going to alter the direction by 20 degrees, either to the left or to the right. Let's see how this works in practice. Okay, there was a random bounce. There's another little random bounce. Good. Okay, so the randomness on the bounce seems to be working in our favor. I think the paddle is a little small, so we'll make some obvious adjustments to the size of the paddle. Let's work on that for just one moment here. So we'll go to the paddle sprite right here. We'll edit that sprite. We will transform it, and let's stretch it here. And I don't want to keep the aspect ratio is the ratio of the width to the height. In this case, let's change the width to 96 pixels. We'll double the width of it, but I don't want to increase the height, so I'll uncheck aspect ratio and I'll put the height back to 16 pixels. We'll mark the transformation for excellent, and we'll click on OK, and now you'll see we've got a longer paddle. Okay, well, we still don't know if that paddle is going to be the right size or not. It now looks like this. It seems to be a little bit better. Obviously, part of the fun of tuning a game is getting your game so that it's fairly easy to play, so that it's increasingly difficult to play, and gives the player more challenges as time goes by. We'd like to keep doing this, so at this point, when the ball goes off the screen, the game sort of doesn't produce a high score table. let's go back and fix that problem. Let's take the ball. Let's create yet another event. Let's go to the other. And we'll notice here what happens if the ball goes outside the room, which is what would happen if the ball passes off the bottom of the screen. So the ball going outside the room means the ball has gone past the paddle without bouncing off of it. In that case, what we probably need to do is display the high score table. So we'll do that. That's the action that displays the high score table. And we'd probably like to restart the game. So let's see if we can find restart game. Where is restart? Here we are. On the main 2 tab is restart the game. And so the game will start over for a new player. Okay, let's see how this game works out. So there's 10 points. Well, I'm afraid I only scored 10 points, so that didn't work out too well. Let's see if we can do a little better here. Whoa. So it's really getting very fast in a hurry. I've already got some high scores, which I haven't beaten. This game needs a little bit of tuning, I think. Okay, well, let's make this paddle a little bit bigger. Let's edit the sprite again. Let's transform it. Let's stretch it. Let's make it, let's make it 128 pixels. And let's leave it like that. That makes it even bigger, maybe too big at this point. And let's see what we've got now. Whoa. Well, I still can't beat my previous scores, so I'm going to end this. Well, I'll try one more time. Still can't beat my previous scores, but I'm sure you get the general idea. And what you need to do now is tune your game and make it a fun and challenging game to play. Thank you.